Hannah,
Right.
welcome to our show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, who you are and what you do?
Okay. So I am Hannah. I am founder of Mind Wellbeing. Mind Wellbeing is a personal passion project of my own. It is half a campaign and overall it's a social enterprise. And the idea and concept behind it is firstly to make people aware of how important the language that they use is and how fundamentally that creates the world around them. And so by continuing to use a term like mental or a word like mental, how that one word is driving all the feelings and thoughts that are creating people to feel depressed and anxious. So if we removed that one word, would that automatically alleviate so much fear and so much shame around the topic? And for people who are struggling, by just alleviating that one word, would that automatically make them feel a whole lot better about what they're experiencing?
Let's go straight in then.
Yeah, I've gone a little bit straight in, just randomly bambled.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Straight to the point.
Yeah.
So why is this super important to, is it important to children, teenagers, adults? Why is it important and who?
Everyone. So this is relevant for everyone. So for me, it was me reaching a very difficult stage in my life and my learning from that being, I don't want anyone, if I can help anyone not get to the point I felt, then I want to do that. And fundamentally, when I've researched, read, re-educated myself, done new qualifications, everything else, I've gone, right, well, to break the back of this crisis, we have to start with prevention and we have to start as young as possible to make a break in the snowball and avalanche that's been created. So the work in terms of the business is primarily starting with children as young as possible. But the idea is that then programs will grow into something that covers a child from 4 all the way to the point that they leave school and beyond, because we're working with companies as well. The campaign side of it is then something that should touch everyone and drive that awareness as to how quite often we recreate scenarios and feelings and things from ourselves through the stories that we tell. And I know firsthand, personally, in my own experience, I have kept myself stuck in a feeling.
So let's take it a little bit back because you said how I felt.
Yeah.
Are you all right to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I was at the stage of feeling like there was no point in me being here anymore.
Why?
I just felt worthless.
So what, we're going to bring it then, a bit more relevant, say, to us here at Create. All right? Before I get there, I'm going to share a little story with you that I've just recently found out. And we are going to do our own little mini bit of raising awareness, joining a very simplistic act of sort of like kindness that we in the footballing world know how to do best. So there was a little, try and keep it brief, but there's a little 11, 12-year-old boy in Nottingham that had experienced some difficulty and he'd had some, some
Adverse
challenges.
experiences.
And he recently took his own life. 11, 12-year-old, I think he was. And, he was part of a footballing community. So the footballing community have reached out to the FA and they've asked if local clubs throughout the whole of the UK can, have a minute silence for the little lad to help share and spread the word, because it is a big thing. So let's bring a construction company into this, right? Because it's easier to capture a younger generation as adults, such as, the little 12-year-old there who's experienced difficulties, doesn't know how to deal with it. Probably people don't know how to deal with the challenges or deal with how they deal with support, because obviously it's probably today under-resourced. There's a lot of funding there, but who knows and who's trained how to deal with it, okay? Yeah. We've got a construction company here. Construction companies are in, obviously, the one of the biggest sectors in UK work, and it has, a huge death at work, factor. I think the biggest one's fall from heights. I don't actually know what the number is of, deaths related to, is it adverse challenge?
Yeah, adverse circumstances.
We're going to come into that.
Yeah.
Because we need to kind of myth bust. We need to know what the terminology is, why it exists. What do we use today? What do we need to change? We're going to talk about that a little.
Yeah.
But in the construction industry, it's quite, I want to say, traditionally known to be manly, man up, get on with it. Yeah. We're bigger, we're harder, we're stronger than that. What's up with you? That kind of terminology. So let's put into context. It's traditionally known as a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
Although, there's quite a lot of, fortunately, there's quite a lot of, young women coming into the industry now, which is fantastic. There is a place for everybody now, and it's great to see. But we are seeing a huge increase in men struggling with the challenges. Now, we today would say they're struggling with mental problems, right? What would you say?
They're struggling with their well-being and the well-being of their mind, and they also don't have a great understanding of emotion.
So is it what's the right word? Is it wrong to say today?
Yeah.
Come on, what's up with you? Have you got mental health issues or what?
I would say yes.
So if we heard that on a construction site, because a lot of it is bravado, it's macho, it's it's like, come on, we need to get a job done. What's up with you?
Yeah.
Probably followed by a little bit of a name calling kind of thing. This is a hard industry to crack.
It is.
Okay, so how would you approach that now, given that's not an easy task?
It's not. So if you go with the whole, what's up with you, pull yourself together, or you're mental, right? That's, if we break that down to the person who's saying that, they're coming from a defensive place. That communication isn't open. It's not connecting. They're already on the defense and they're like, just come on, put yourself together. So for the other person, if they are struggling, then they're not getting anything that they need in that moment. And although someone saying to them, come on, pull yourself together, your mental you, might spur them on to finish the day the way they should and get on with their work, it won't make them feel any better. And what's probably just happened is something that's happened to them before in how they've been spoken to, and they have just got on. But will they leave feeling any better? No. Now, do I think like all banter and stuff like that should be eradicated from a building site? No, I do not. Like, it's part of camaraderie. It can bring the workforce together.
Yeah, it
And
builds a
so,
culture, doesn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
and I'm all for that. However, so as an example, the first workshop or talk I've done recently, a few weeks ago, was to 30 men in construction from Breedon Aggregates. And that was my first, like, I'm going to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
And so my, because I always think critically, which I know that kind of goes against what I'm saying, but I am trying to, throughout this process, I'm retraining myself.
Yeah, you've
as
got
well.
your own challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my thoughts were, they're going to think, what's this whimsical blonde coming in and telling us about mind well-being?
Yeah.
Now, what it came down to when we broke it down, so I did go in there we did a bit of an exercise as to, right, what do you think of when you think about this word mental? And I did use some examples of things I would have heard on a building site. You fucking mental. Whatever it might be. And then we went down, what do you think about when you think of the word mind and things like that? And it actually prompted a very, very open conversation as to men not ever feeling like they have any avenue to be open about how they feel because of the, say, generation of the audience that I was talking to. There's the, at home, I've got to be the man, and that's defined as almost like a protector who suffers in silence.
There is a stigma, isn't there?
Yeah.
About the behaviour of the man gets up, goes to work, he's the provider, he comes home, he brings the money, he's the head of the house, the breadwinner.
Yeah.
That stigma.
Yeah.
So there's an element of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an element of, I can't show weakness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and at the point where but that's the pivotal point that we've got to kind of redefine, especially with this culture in construction, is that by being a bit more vulnerable, you're actually being stronger. And if you can start demonstrating that and setting an example that that's the way we should do it, then people will start to follow. But whilst ever there's that, it's weak, then you're all going to stay suffering. Because what makes people feel better? So everyone goes through crap. Everyone has shit happen to them. It's part of life. It happens to all of us. What makes the people who come through it robustly to the people who it cripples is that their ability to share and process what's happened for them. And for men typically, and I'm not wanting to like ring fence all of them, but the typical stereotype is probably has had shit happen to them as a kid that, you know, the dad certainly didn't share, so they don't share, so they keep it. And it stays, and then something else happens, and we bury it, and then something else happens, and I'm a very big believer in. So, for me, emotion is just energy in motion.
Okay.
So if we can learn that, and I think this is a good angle to come at it with men, because then you're taking the whole female crying like it's all about the woman emotion thing away from it. Men have emotions too, and it's not just a woman's thing. And if we define it as being right, an emotion is just energy in motion, and the heavier emotions make us feel that way. They make us feel heavy. They make us feel and and the lighter emotions instantly make us feel the complete opposite. So if we can gain an education that I'm feeling a certain energy, where's that coming from? And how can I shift it? Then that's one piece of the puzzle to teach and pass on. But for the men who have been dealing with for 40 years, there's a lot of heaviness there. And internally, probably a lot of, I wish I could share this with someone, but never have, don't have the skill set to, and no one else does it, so I'm not going to.
So you say obviously that could be like a 40-year stint,
Yeah.
because obviously the stigma in males and that there's been bottled up energy for quite some time. How do you break down those barriers? 40 years of a tradesman doing the do every day, day in, day out. Don't you become immune to it? It's actually opening up is going to be a bit more like, I don't need to open up, this is how I deal with it.
The thing is, I don't think you become immune to it, because I don't think you can deny
what's
physics.
It? Let's dig to it. Give us an example. What is it that, say, a typical tradesman could be bottling up that actually they would see benefit in spilling to, like, see yourself?
So it could be fear. So
Anything in particular?
Fear of providing and not being able to. Fear of something that's happened to them previously, be it a breakdown of relationship, something that happened to them, like something they saw in the mum and dad, a fear of something happening again.
Yeah.
It could be fear of losing someone because they have lost someone.
So I get fear. That's good. I think these are very obvious things that we could all be subject to.
Yeah,
so fear's a good one.
Anger.
And I'm chucking you under a bus here.
Yeah.
So we've got fear. You mentioned anger.
Yeah.
Okay, anger's an interesting one because anger and frustration on a building site, as we all know, can be a daily occurrence.
Yeah.
It could be because you've just hit your thumb with the hammer. If you've got a bad aim as a joiner and you've not hit the nail. But anger, why anger? Isn't that an auto response to stubbing your toe or something?
Yeah. No, I think, it can be. So anger where you stub your toe and you're like, for fuck's sake. And you'll like
Especially
hop about the
toe.
room, for a few minutes, and you might swear or whatever. That's processed. You felt it, you went, rah, and you got it out. So for women, don't feel like they can show anger. So a lot of women hold suppressed anger. For men, a lot of them either suppress anger because they don't know how to healthily express it, or express it in an unhealthy way and like just go and knock someone out or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we can see that.
And again, if we were able to think of and have different ways of expressing that anger than doing that, then could you alleviate some of that? Another one would...
So is this the big thing of like pressure release valve?
Yeah.
Is this what this is?
Yeah, massive.
Right. So ultimately, we're trying to get the message across to men.
Yeah.
Is it mainly men on building sites? 'Cause I suppose women are new into the industry, circa 10 years maybe, a bit more frequently now.
Yeah.
Do you see it more in men, or is it just that we're having this conversation?
I can only, for a woman in construction, I can only speak for myself having been there. And I don't know if subconsciously that's what made me feel comfortable in that environment anyway. But I actually, this is a whole new thing for me. At the time in my old job, I would have behaved just as much as they did. And whether that was because that was what I was comfortable with, I would have sat there feeling like I couldn't tell anybody how I felt. I couldn't share, I couldn't offload.
So is the deeper message here that it's actually the stigma of construction rather than the stigma of the sex of the person?
Yeah, I think it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because actually, as well, if I look around at, you know, other women who I've had working relationships with in that industry, I would have said we probably had similar things in that regard, if that makes sense.
That's an interesting one. All right, so pressure release valve.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think the reason, the pressure release, for me, I'm a big believer that us suppressing our emotions creates disease.
Okay.
And especially later on in life.
Yeah.
So disease is dis-ease within the body. So if we're not feeling our emotions, processing them, releasing them, however, and we're bottling stuff up, that creates dis-ease in the body. And I don't know what the statistics are, and I am just throwing this statement out, so this isn't based on anything. But I think if we did look at the statistics of men in construction and how the statistics compare for things like, you know, heart disease, obesity, you know, these typical illnesses that seem to be crippling the nation, I bet but they'd be higher than other industries.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, because obviously there's a lot of pressures, you know, financial pressures, there's time pressures, things like that. And I suppose the focus is in a high-risk environment combined with the both timely and financial constraints can be quite, am I all right to say, stressful?
Yeah.
So I suppose it is quite an interesting subject. It's quite a new subject, especially into construction, but quite a relevant topic. So I suppose this conversation is hopefully inspiring to many others in the industry as well, not just everyone here at Create. And hopefully this video can have a positive impact on anybody watching. There's a bit more of a, you know, realization that it's actually okay to talk.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. So let's move on to something a bit more proactive now then.
Yeah.
So first things first, we need to remove the stigma of it's not okay to bottle it up.
Yeah.
The first thing, you know, we should not be ashamed of is talking. You know, if there's problems, if there's issues at home, it's good to talk.
Yeah.
Be it talk to a friend, talk to a colleague, talk to a boss, family member, whoever it may well be. Let's introduce Mind Wellbeing.
Yeah.
How would someone on a construction site benefit from talking to, you know, either yourself or, you know, a member of staff at Mind Wellbeing?
I think it's not necessarily mind wellbeing as being like a one-to-one service with, it could be, absolutely. But how I'd see it being able to implement and integrate into a building site is, so last night I met an old colleague of mine who's going to sit on the board of Mind Wellbeing.
Okay.
And he's still in construction. He nearly lost his son to suicide. He's lost a couple of friends to suicide in the industry. So a subject very close to his heart. And he's wanting to actually try and formulate something just purely construction related. But when we were talking, for me, it's implementing some like small, some campaigns that would promote talking amongst themselves and bringing that camaraderie back, using the right language, and then almost some like daily rituals back to, I know it sounds really holistic, but there wouldn't be holistic rituals. But one of the things we talked about last night was that lads on site don't get in the canteen at lunchtime anymore and sit round and have their lunch and banter and bring spirits back up.
Communicate.
Yeah. They sit in the van on the phone, sit in at the house that they're working in so that they can just nail the food and then crack on, because that means they'll get the however much more in the week by whatever. Like, that spirit's been lost. And I think for a lot of men within construction, that spirit on the side is one thing that probably kept them going. You know, it's that camaraderie, that like, we're in it together, we're working together towards something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas things seem to be a lot more segregated now in terms of that's your job, that's your job, that's your job, that's your job. And everyone's acting a lot more insular than together.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a huge key. You know, I'm not naive enough to think that every man on a building site, having not done this for 40 years, is all of a sudden going to be able to come to Mind Wellbeing and pour out that you know, that's completely unrealistic.
So we're talking then, there are ways for, you know, man or woman or, you know, anybody on a building site to be, you know, forthcoming or proactive by themselves.
Yeah.
How can companies such as Create be more proactive to provide that awareness to their teams?
So that would be, so as an example, what I'm doing with Breedon is they're doing some wellbeing days over next year, and I'm going to go to them to kind of implement like the Mind Wellbeing message. So for me, it would be not to go back to like what I'm doing at schools, but it is, you know, we're human beings. So it's the same principle, just on a different narrative. So it's like, right, well, let's install the message as to what we should be doing and how we should be talking to each other. And let's have that visually represented so we're not forgetting about it day to day. So it's there and we see it. And then let's start by having some key pointers in the day where, you know what, we do get together. And let there be a mechanism that if someone actually does want to open up and talk, that, I don't know, is a nominated people that they can do that to, that have had some additional training.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the ideas I had for construction after speaking to the Breedon guys was how, so in my experience, things like counselling and therapy and things like that, the person is basically a mirror for you, and they're like almost there to validate your experiences in a really compassionate, empathetic way. And for that generation of men that aren't comfortable doing that, I think one of the guys in the call at Breedon was like, you know, what you said about how we use our language and stuff makes complete sense. But and my wife's been banging on at me for this for years, but in half an hour what you've said resonated more, which generally does if someone comes externally in. There's nothing special about what I've said. His wife's probably said exactly what I've said. But if it comes in externally, it does resonate more. But what I thought was how AI could be used massively as it trained to that person. It would be it would almost act like a counsellor and therapist for them, because it would be listening to them and mirroring back to them their experiences in an empathetic manner.
It's quite interesting. You know, I talk to my AI quite regularly, and we have good conversation. But there's some great points there. Let's move on to something a bit more fun.
Okay.
How are you sharing your message, and is there anything that you're doing events-wise coming up that people can get involved in to help share your message?
Yes. So I am next month climbing the Yorkshire Three Peaks.
So we're talking October now.
October. Yeah, so October the 19th. And that is to elevate the mind wellbeing message as a whole. But it is also to raise funds to be able to deliver the school training into as many local schools as we can free of charge. Because one of the blockages we're experiencing is schools saying yes, want it, need it,
Can't afford it
can't
yet.
afford it. Yeah. So that's one of the events that we're doing. That is also a way of bringing people together. So we've already got a group of people who are doing the walk who are from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
Excuse the pun. So we've got people in construction, yoga teachers, PTs, therapists, beauticians, like
All the fit people then.
There's like a lot of different people who on a small scale who I've talked about it to, and they're like, oh my God, yeah, and want to be involved. And for me, for as many people as possible can join in and be involved in that.
So we'll definitely join you on that day. It'll be quite interesting. And hopefully some, if they get to listen before the event, we'll try and get this out and try and get as many people on there to join you as much as possible. But okay, so we've done a bit of myth busting there. I think that'll probably wrap us up for now. But I'm pretty sure we can get you involved in our lot and see if we can get you over and have a chat with them and see if we can make a big difference there. All right, thanks for coming on.